Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Roll Wise Show, where we talk about things related to tabletop RPGs and all that other good stuff. Today, we're actually going to be talking about a topic. It kind of was inspired by a few things. One of them being the most recent launch of the Aliens Second Edition, the Evolved Edition, which you can find on Kickstarter. We're not affiliated with Free League or anything like that. We just happen to like most of the Free League games that we've played. I think I would say all of them so far.
Yeah, I
We've
enjoy
definitely
pretty much
enjoyed
all
it.
their games. Yeah,
Yeah, so there's a lot of enthusiasm for me, at least, to back the Kickstarter thing and pay them money in either American or Swedish dollars, whatever they want to call it, and get the new stuff when it comes out. Because I'm really excited that they actually have some previews that I guess they're going to be given shortly after the Kickstarter closes. So you get my
Nice.
grubby little hands on some digital documents shortly afterwards.
yeah, their quick
Uh,
starts, their quick starts are usually pretty good too. So
yeah. So yeah, and I think that it's we have recently played Chariot of the Gods, which was a very fond experience, including things that it had goals that made players antagonistic to each other. And that's kind of our topic tonight: player versus players, and why in-character conflicts are really fun. And I think that they can
can be
be
fun.
both. Well, they can be fun. They can also be challenging. They can present opportunities for losing friends or gaining memorable stories. There's a lot that can go right, and there's also a lot that can go wrong. So I thought today that we would go through a little bit and kind of share our thoughts, talk about some memorable experiences we had, and then kind of just throw it back out to the crowd and see if there's anybody that wants to share their stories, best PvP that they've ever had in a game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, first question. I mean, what is PvP in the context of tabletop RPGs? Let's start at the ground level. Brent, what do you got for me?
Well, I think it's more than character conflict. I think it's character conflict with the intent of one character to kill the other character or win in a way. Like
Okay.
using the Alien game as an example, it wasn't just we were at counter goals. It was that
Mhm.
like my character's goal was to I think it was to kill everybody and blow up the ship. I think is what the final goal was.
Well, I mean, that's what you ultimately did to achieve your goal, because your goal was to, spoiler alert, it was to basically make sure that the Wayland Corp did not get the specimen,
But I
right?
believe it was to make sure there were no survivors either, because they all might be infected,
Possibly, yeah.
is if I remember right. So it ended with me blowing up the ship, but
Hmm.
and everybody on it. But I think that ultimately was the goal too, was total containment of it to make sure that the rival company to Whalen Utani didn't get it. Or no,
Well,
the
I thought
Whalen
you would,
Utani didn't get it because I was part of the rival company.
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
your goal was either A, get it yourself, or B, destroy it so they didn't get it.
Because you can
Um,
have in character conflict where you're at cross purposes or two people are antagonistic together, but
mhm.
never get to the point where it's like I'm going to kill the other person. And I would consider that okay. It's when it gets to the point where my character is going to kill and or mind control the other player. I think that's when problems start to come up potentially. If the
Sure.
game's not designed around it, especially.
So yeah, and I mean that's true. And so Jeff, he's mentioned kind of like there's gradation between player versus player conflicts. Do you have any on either end of that where, maybe you kind of crossed, you had goals that kind of became, you became antagonistic to another player because of something they were trying to do in game? Maybe they were the
I
murder hobo or whatnot.
I mean sure, we've all done or a certain amount of murder hoboing, and I've played with people who feel like they're taking it too far,
Hmm.
and the rest of the party starts to get a little tired of it. I have played with a few rogues who feel like there's just a thieves tax for them being in the party, and then every time somebody goes to sleep, they're trying to take seven and a half
I think it's
percent of
clever
their
to
gold.
yeah, they think it's clever to steal from the other players. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be in character, like it can be. There can be a story, plot driven reason for these things
Hmm.
to exist that create a little tension. A certain amount of tension between the party isn't always a bad thing, but it can go too far. And like Brent said, when you have characters actively trying to harm each other, or you know, an argument spills over from in character to in person, as the players,
Mhm.
suddenly throwing Cheetos at each other across the table.
Mhm.
It can definitely go too far, but I think having a certain amount of tension is a good thing, though. The, when the party is all getting along and all agree on the line, like I don't even mind when you have two people trying to lead. Like
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
can be fun. It can also be horrifically disruptive. It
Mhm.
kind of depends on the players and the GM and how things go. Brent, it looks like you got
I think you're like stealing from the party suggestion is a better example of things
okay.
going, because like what winds up happening in that instance is like, why would the other characters put up with this, and how long would they put up with it for? Like at
Mhm.
best, how this is going to end is they're going to leave the rogue somewhere. They're going to tie him up and just leave him somewhere. Like at best, which means
Fair.
you're going to have to make another character, and it's probably not. They're probably not going to want you to play another rogue.
Well,
Um,
no, but I could think. I mean, I could think of some plot-driven reasons why. Like he's got
Mhm.
this huge debt and he's only adventuring for this, or the big bad's got his hooks into him, and you can have a redemption arc. Maybe I'm overthinking it,
right?
but
No, I think
you could do some cool things.
there is
If
some
it's
cool
just a guy
things.
that wants to be annoying,
But I'm just saying, eventually the party's going to be like, either they're going that's not going to be a cross purposes for
right?
long, because eventually the party's going to be like,
Yeah,
okay, you better have a really good reason for this. Oh no, I just like
yeah,
money. It's probably going to wind you. That's the party's either going to attack the rogue at that point and be like,
yeah.
you do it again, we're going to cut
That's
you.
how you find those people staked out over the anthills.
Right, or we're just going to leave you somewhere, like
Yeah,
not
just
to
on the side
die,
of the
but just
road.
leave you somewhere.
Yeah, you're no
Because
longer
like
part of the party.
that's when the PvP becomes like, even if
It's disruptive.
even if it's not,
Disruptive.
and even if it's not antagonistic at that point, even if the characters are like, we need you to stop doing that, and the character's like, no, like you have to remember the group has to stay together for some reason.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Um and hopefully it's not like personal things. Hopefully it's not like I'm stealing from this person every time.
I'm
Yeah.
stealing from the paladin
Yeah.
because he'll turn the other cheek.
Well, yeah, that is another problem. I've run into problems in parties where I played a paladin, which is why I stopped playing them entirely, because like, grave robbing is kind of a thing in D&D. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm going to go steal that stuff from that warrior's grave over there." And I kind of play the paladins that are like, "No, you're not going to do that." And then there's a problem.
And the adventurers are like, "You see this? I'm an adventurer." Like
Right.
a grave robbing is just part of the
So,
job description.
so after
Um,
you fought the evil guy's henchmen, were you like, okay, we need to pack up their personal possessions and send them by messenger to their
I
family?
think it was more like just walk away. But like,
Just walk
grave
away.
robbing a religious site
Oh yeah, no,
is
that's yeah,
different than we
it is.
defeated an enemy, which is a common thing that happens. Oh, it's a burial tomb. Let's go in there and see
Well,
what
we
we
need
can
this magic
find.
item
see what's been
to
left.
Yeah,
save the world,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
technically, it's looting a grave.
yeah, exactly. Which,
Well,
especially old school, like a Paladin Oath was
mhm.
like, you don't do
Yeah,
that ever.
no.
Yeah, so
Well, and I think that this brings up an interesting topic because the first thing is that I think what I kind of want to dive into is like how game masters can kind of get into this and all that. But I think just talking about games, there are definitely games that are designed for PvP,
mhm.
and then there are games where I mean you have enough stats that you can obviously adjudicate a player versus player interaction. And I mean, if you want to go full PvP, I mean, Brent, you said this before stream, Deathmatch Island.
Paranoia.
It's a paranoia. One that I remember from my youth is Amber Diceless. These are designed with you having conflicts around player conflicts. Like
Well, and
that's
conflicts drives the story. Like the point of the
yeah.
game, Alien 2 to a degree, is the point of
Mhm.
the game is to have these conflicts. And so the players kind of go in with that mindset, as in, again, like we always say, session zero is important, because that's where
It is.
reach that understanding.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, we're playing paranoia. Don't take it personal when somebody calls you a traitor and your
Yeah.
clone gets killed.
Or in Amber, when I take over the role of king, don't be surprised if I put you under boot.
It's
Or if I blow up your ship with everybody on
Mhm.
it.
well, yeah, we had two ships blow up.
I didn't blow up the
One,
first one.
one, one by another player. I know. Yeah, you weren't involved. and then I helped you
Blow the second one.
inadvertently
Yeah.
because I felt like it was infect the entire human race,
Mhm.
blow up the ship,
Right.
So I inadvertently helped you. But I I want to go back to your session zero comment because it's so much different when people know that there's going to be subterfuge or PvP or potentially hidden traders, right? Which is probably one of the most common things, or just cross
Mhm.
purposes. If you know that going into a game, I have heard stories about times where like the GM pulls one person aside and is like, "Are you?" And it's built into the plot, and I think you could probably handle it well. But if you don't know that something like that's coming, some players may not be super receptive to it.
Right. And I think an in-story trader is fine. It's more the moment where somebody's like, well, I want to do that. I think we should do this. And one person says no. And then the person goes, well, I'm going to mind control him to do that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, that's a horrible example. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
it's an excellent example of a horrible behavior.
Right. Which I've had
Okay.
happen. I've had that happen in a game, and it is not good. It is immediately sets a really bad precedent.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like in the
Well,
Alien game, we all knew going in,
right.
we had fun. We were trying to figure out. We had characters we relied on, right? They were like
Mhm.
our I forget what the game term was, but they were our best friends or our
Right.
buddies. And then we had our arch enemy,
Mhm.
type the person that we just didn't get along with just from the get-go, right from character creation. And then
Mhm.
all of us had our own, even the ones that were kind of close to each other weren't the same. Like
Yeah.
our
Right.
goals are it was funny, we were all going in different directions.
It's
It was
true.
fun. We still talk about this game, what, over a year later?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
And we're gonna be
like
excited to play more Aliens because I bought
yes.
some
No,
or
that's an impressive
funded
feat.
Because
some.
we have
That's an
to.
impressive feat with
Yeah.
some PvP elements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bring it to the session zero conversation just to kind of tie that up so people can at least have those thoughts. I think the interesting part about session zero is that this is where you really can set those ground rules. And I think that maintaining like a consensus among your players is really important just so that you can avoid that feels bad moment or anything along those lines. People talk about safety tools, people talk about all whatever name you want to focus on them, but I think understanding the type of players that you have and whether or not they're open to those types of things is good. And a lot of people, if they don't like PvP, it's just a strong nope. So you have to resolve it some other way.
Mhm.
And that's fine. And if they're open to a little bit of PvP, if the story allows for it and it makes for an interesting thing, that's cool too. But if most players in session zero that I've experienced don't just turn it into open season and and like
Right.
where it's like you have a goal, but you know what? Be backstabby. Do you're chaotic neutral? Be as chaotic neutral as you want to be. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not really. I don't. I think that's more the exception than the rule itself. What do you guys think for a GM or DM should do to kind of like to set the tone for that? Do you think it should be called out? Do you think it should
I think you
develop
should
in
definitely call
game?
it out that there's going to be like intrigue and cross purposes and things like that. I think calling it out is good. Like that's one of the things that made the Alien game good. Is not only does it tell you you're all going to have goals
Mhm.
and they might be cross purpose to the goals of other people in the group. And additionally, and I think that really set the tone. So the first time that you got your goal, you were like, oh, okay, I understand how this works. And I think setting that expectation is important. Um, and then I think doing a temperature check after every session, be like, how does everybody feel? Does everybody still feel good with how things going? Because then you can kind of course correct if somebody's like, I really don't like where this is going, and you can kind of maybe course correct in your next game.
Yeah.
I just to add on, I think it also gives a certain amount of permission to like role play in that
Mhm.
way where a lot of the times a lot of what we're doing is really cooperative, right?
Mhm.
We're not trying to be the obstacle, the immovable object in the middle of the road. We're trying to work with the group and work with the person running the game. Um, and sometimes it frees me up knowing that okay, this is that type of game, and we can do some of these types of
Mhm.
things. And I'm going to try to do those things in the spirit of what my character, as I've built it, would do.
Mhm.
You know, what are their beliefs? You know, how would they react in this situation? Not how would Jeff do the thing that upsets the most people in the party, right?
Mhm.
Like there's a difference between a character having a cross purpose and me just trying to aggravate the people that I'm playing
Yeah, it's like choosing to play a Kender in your Dragonlance game.
with.
They're
Didn't
slightly
you guys have a
aggravating.
whole party of Kenders?
No.
I
Was
always
there
joke. I
two?
always
Was it
joke.
just one?
I always
You just
joke
joke.
about that. Yeah, I just
Okay.
joke about
I would
that.
never allow it. They would be
Uh,
like, "Oh, DM, we have an idea. We're gonna be a whole party of Kenders," and I'd be like, "Well, who's the DM?"
They would all just be finding things from each other the entire game. Oh, look what I
Yeah.
found in my pocket. Oh, look what I
Eh,
found in my pocket. Isn't this yours? Yeah,
no, no, no.
how'd that
I
get in my
think that
pocket?
that's
right. Because that
so.
used to be a thing with
Sorry.
Kender. So, but yeah, but like, like you're intending to do some annoying things if you're playing that sort of
Mhm.
character.
Well, and so I think that some of that stuff, I mean, it is really interesting because I think Jeff, when you say like, "Oh, I'm not trying to be that annoying person," but sometimes people are, and I think that when you look at it, like there is definitely some separation that has to happen. Like if you get good role players that are actually playing their character, you might organically come into conflict because they get into this character that has, whatever background choices that they make, and they're like, "Well, my character wouldn't really be okay with your character murdering small monster children." You know what I'm saying? Like they're like it's just like so even though as a party you may have kind of aligned your goals as to this is what we're trying to do, there may be situationally things that you don't that you don't agree with or a player,
Well,
takes
yeah.
into their character and you can't you can't fault the player for trying to role play, like say, that's not.
Well, you can't, but there are things that cross a line and get into
Mhm.
the safety tools area where somebody can go.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with where this is going.
I
You
mean,
know what? Like,
that's the
go
thing
ahead.
with any go. No, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
No, no, I that was actually
Oh, okay. Well, that's the thing with PvP is like the PvP becomes a problem when it's not fun for one person anymore.
Mhm.
Like the moment that you push it up to that point, and they're like, okay, this isn't something that I enjoy anymore. That's when PvP is a problem. Is when one person, potentially like the mind control situation, when one person feels
Mhm.
potentially victimized by the other character, like that's really
Mhm.
not great. And then or just feels like their like agency or fun is just being taken away by other players. Like that's the worst part about PvP.
So here's a question. Is if there's a group and they decide in a situation where there's going to be player versus player and you're kind of in that like, rough territory that you're not sure if this is a good situation or bad situation. If the decision is made as a group that frames it in the term of story impact, like making the story richer, do you think that that is at least a positive approach in those kind of situations that may be okay for a certain player versus player action to take place, even if you might not have thought of it? Like you're in your mind control situation, if the mind control leads to a better story outcome, do you know
Not
I
unless
guess
the other
I
person
guess the hard
agrees to
part
it.
is that how do you get them to agree with it without it being peer pressure too? Like, "Oh, that's the best story, dude."
Right.
And 3 out of 4
Exactly.
people are like and one person's like,
Right. And you have to listen to that. In my opinion, you have to listen to that one
you
person because
have to.
character.
"Sure."
And you make the story go the way a different way about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to like if it's something like that, it has to be something that everybody agrees to.
yeah.
Sure.
Especially or at least the person that's getting mind controlled or whatever. Because you're setting up that situation where one person wins and one person loses, and
Mhm.
that is a whole heap of feels bads that can happen in that case, and it would be hard. It would be hard. It gets to the point where it's hard to keep the game together when stuff like that happens.
Sure. So more the moral of the story is that still focus on the outcomes, avoid the winning and losing, but make sure
Mhm.
that everyone, I mean, you may not have 100% cool story, but maybe everyone's 90% cool story or something where everyone's happy with the way
Right.
it plays out.
You have to balance it, and you have to balance it for everybody. That's the
Mhm.
trick. That's the GM trick, right? The
Yeah,
storyteller trick is like we have to make it fun for everyone.
no, no,
Yeah.
exactly, because that's how you go from groups of 5 to groups of 4 to groups of 3 to groups of 2.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, or a group just completely imploding because two people took one side and two people took the other side, and
Yeah.
you're caught in the middle,
it's
kind
it's
of.
it's it's better off to call timeout,
Yeah.
back up, reorganize. I know we're getting into
So,
a slightly different area than just PvP, but
so I have a question.
yeah.
So
Sure.
what do you do in a situation where somebody's like, I mind control the other player? What would you guys do in that situation?
Well, I think I think that's where this is where it starts off from the DM perspective. I mean, first of all, mechanically, some systems don't allow those types of things, and so like if the system allows for it mechanically, then we have to start a whole thing. And as the DM, I think this is the first time you know, I mean, a lot of times I'm a little bit more passive as a DM, and when it comes to like letting players decide how their characters are interacting, and I try not to like jump in like a helicopter parent. But
Oh
I
yeah.
think this is a good time to do that. Be like, whoa, whoa, wait a second here. Before we continue down this path, let's really talk out what you're trying to accomplish and what exactly you expect them to do, and how and what's their reaction to it. And I think that would be my first step because I hate saying no right out of the gate because I don't want to put myself into somebody else's pocket. But if somebody says no immediately to that, then I'm like, okay, we're not going to allow mind control because we agreed in session 0 that we want this to be fun for everybody.
But like,
And
yeah, D&D comes to mind because there's a whole host of like different mind control
mhm,
spells in D&D that work on humans or
dominate mind.
humanoids. Yeah, dominate mind, erase memory, like
Mhm.
like there's all sorts of things that like that's cool of magic is pretty nefarious for. And I actually have been on the receiving end of that sort of treatment before, which was
Well,
pretty
I
uncomfortable.
can tell this isn't a hypothetical
Yeah.
or something that you saw on Reddit or somewhere else.
No, it,
It
it,
doesn't
it
feel
actually
that way.
happened to me before. Yeah. Um,
Well,
which is weird. And I was
um,
not ready for it.
No, but
well, and
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, and it really depends on the type of table you're at, and that's how I think this is the easiest way for you to find out if you're at the right table or not. Is are people willing to do that to another member of their cadre, their
Mhm.
party, and all of those kind of things. And I mean, and I think we actually talked about it a little bit, you know, and this is funny because we actually, and Jeff, if you're okay with talking about this from our inevitable game, we had a situation where I didn't know how it was going to go, but
Yeah.
storyline, we decided to take a specific storyline approach to it with Jeff's permission, like he because it kind of could put him antagonistically against the party in certain regards. That hasn't really played out yet. We're still kind of in a situation to see how that goes, but it was one of those things as a GM, we just talked on the side because I didn't
Yeah.
want to have put him in that position without him being acceptable for it. And if that makes sense.
Well,
And
No, and
the person being ready to take the consequences is really the person that you need the permission from. Like
mhm,
the person going, I mind control him. Like he doesn't really give. He doesn't really. I mean, yeah,
he
he
doesn't get a
doesn't give
vote.
a shit. Yeah, he doesn't get a vote.
no.
He's made a decision. The person being mind controlled is the one that needs to yay or nay on that. So the person
Yeah.
that's going to suffer the fallout's the worst part.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's
Exactly.
a it's a good example, Mike, because I have an allegiance to the party and I
Mhm.
also have an allegiance to my God. And I asked my God for a favor to help me do something to meet a party goal. And my God said, "Wow, that's a juicy prize. I think I'd like that for myself." And I, in character, and I told Mike and I talked about it, right? We talked
Mhm.
about it. And
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the consequences, but it was kind of I didn't like take it in front of everybody and then hand it off. It sort of just got ethereally, teleported. Um, but yes, it's going to make the things with the group harder. But I sometimes characters have competing allegiances,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I didn't do it because I was like, haha, this is really going to mess up the party and make our journey harder. It was we didn't have another way to get this,
This
and
is
so
something that
I
needs to
I
be
did a
done.
Hail Mary, and then in the middle of the Hail Mary, I was told, I think I'm going to keep that, and I'm like that, and
Well,
my character would be yes that I
That
I
makes sense.
agreed to pay a price. I
Yeah.
paid a price, but the price
mhm.
is not just that. The price is whatever happens
Right.
with with the party, really. And I
Mhm.
hope that the group's okay with. Like,
I don't know how many people are aware of it because that's more information that I've gotten out of it.
yeah,
So
No,
Well, you're just
yeah,
gonna have to not
and then
metagame
we didn't
now,
meet
Brent.
this week, and yeah,
I'll forget about it by next week. We're good.
no, it's okay. Uh, There's going to be fallout. There has to be fallout, right? We were supposed to take this to somewhere else, and it's not there now.
My character understands taking care of yourself.
But needless to say, we're not
The
exactly
the
sure what
knight
fallout is.
errant might feel differently about that, but my character would be like, makes sense, I guess.
Well, right now there's a little bit of question mark in the air, so who knows what's actually happened. We have not uncovered that part of the story yet.
Yeah,
So,
I don't.
It's true.
I'm making some assumptions. I don't have all of the
mhm,
information.
yep. So it's just interesting kind of stuff because before at least proceeding down this path in the story, it was good to get Jeff's buy-in to say, "Hey, are you okay with this?" And I think that's exactly how our conversation went.
It
Is
did.
that it was like it's an interesting story to have this happen in this way, whether or not we know whether or not the fallout for what you're doing is readily apparent. Um, that's still something we get to discover as we continue to play.
It is an
Yeah.
interesting party though, and we all do have some different allegiances, and
Mhm.
already seen some cross purposes emerge. We've avoided them, but there's been a
Mhm.
couple.
Mhm.
I th-
Well, I think cross purposes and like making a character a traitor or something like that, like that's different.
yes,
That's different to me because somebody's accepting the responsibility of those actions. It's the PvP moments that are a surprise. Like I
Mhm.
steal from the party every night. Oh right, well I catch the rogue stealing from me, so I attack him. Like it's those PvP moments that I think are more the essence of what we're talking about because those are the
it is.
gotcha. Those are the
Mhm.
one character. Well, because what you're doing is you're removing one character from the game. Essentially, it's
Yeah.
like well, like I said, you're either the best case scenario is the rogue winds up tied up to a tree somewhere and they leave him and they
Mhm.
don't let him back in the party. It's like, oh, well, you need to roll a new character. But I
Yeah.
love that rogue. Well, he shouldn't have been a piece of shit and been stealing from his friends.
It's all true. It's all true.
But I have a good reason. Well, you didn't tell them that.
Yeah.
So
If the reason doesn't come out and we don't get a good plot, we don't get a we don't we there's not
oh,
understanding of what's going on. If it's just I just steal from you.
yeah.
It's in my nature, and that's what I
Or
do. Is that what
or
you're always going to do? Yes, but we
Bob killed
don't need
me.
you.
Like how could you let that happen? It's like you're stealing from the party, man. Like what did you expect to happen?
Yeah. And and honestly, I think that the weird part about it is that, with how hard it seems to be for some people to find tables to play
Hmm.
with, you would think that you would want to at least maintain a certain level of harmony with your players. And I always feel like the chance for this stuff to really go awry is if proper expectations haven't been set with a new group
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
new group has one person that's always played like this. Well, the DM isn't going to tell me how to play. I'm going to play my character through and through, and you're going to, if I attack you, you're going to roll dice, like, and then, or it's something that, as you said, there may be outside conflict that's kind of brought into game,
Mhm.
those kind of things. But
Or
I
maybe the
think,
player really doesn't want to play the game. Like that's
yeah,
sometimes. Well, I don't want to say no for the rest of the party, but so I kind of make a character that's kind of antagonistic,
mhm,
just because I'm not happy.
yeah,
So I'm gonna try and make other people unhappy. I've seen that happen before too, even
mhm,
in groups of friends. I made a character that's completely cross purposes to the rest of the party, just because I want to be. I'm grumpy and I want to be obstinate.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think we've all seen that. I don't know if I've seen that like for a whole campaign, but definitely parts. I've definitely
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
people not having a good time, and so they're living out some of their
yeah. They
real
start
life
making
emotions in the
yeah
game.
start making shitty decisions just to drive the party in a direction that isn't necessarily good. Yeah.
yeah.
Sort of like
So,
there was that game that you were running where I don't know, you decided one of my characters decided he was going to kill the gods, and we ran into that character that was totally going to murder us all, and like I pushed for it, but I eventually was like, okay, fine, we won't attack the guy. Like that's what eventually you have to do, is like you eventually have to make a decision that's in league with the
mhm,
party. Otherwise, being the guy that gets your whole party killed isn't necessarily
yeah.
a good idea.
So so I think that player versus player is probably not for every table, but the cool part about it is that if done well, it can be a really unique storytelling experience. Like if you have inter-party conflicts and stuff like that, you can have some really good stories. But like I said, you always have to weigh that with the chance that you hurt feelings. You have to, losing players at your table. I mean, really, it has to be done with care and grace. Really, I think those are the things you have to do. Is that
And there should be story elements for it. Like you're
Mhm.
100%
Yeah, there's
correct.
got to be reasons, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
you need to
So
communicate. And I think there needs to be forethought. Like that's why it's that
mhm,
kind of stuff is in a session 0,
Mhm.
so people when you're setting expectations, people know in advance and have a chance in a
yep.
setting where they can say no.
And if and
Mhm.
if and if you want to do PvP, maybe pick up a game that is
Well,
designed that way to try and
Yeah,
minimize, because those games are all, it's like playing a board game. Like there's going to be a winner and loser in a board game, and a
mhm.
lot of those PvP games, like that's what you have to kind of think of them as, kind of a role
Well,
as a
and
board
what's
game.
nice is if your RPG group doesn't happen to be a group that you haven't had that kind of stress testing. I hate to call it that, but if you haven't done it, get aliens, run Chariot of the Gods, see how they react when they have cross-purpose goals and everything like that. And it's kind of them versus each other. Because if you want to introduce that into your long-running 3-year campaign and you haven't seen how they perform that situation,
And make sure they watch the movie, because guess what? In most of the movies, aliens, especially aliens, the aliens aren't the bad guy. I mean, they're bad, but they're not the bad guy in the
it's usually a
movie.
representative of the Wayland Yutani Corps.
Yeah. It's Burke. Goddamn Burke. Burke is the goddamn villain in that movie.
so well, do you guys have any closing thoughts before we suggest that people tune in next time to watch Castles and Crusades as we do, what did I call it? Marathon Man?
You did
We
call
called
it
it
that, but
Marathon
that was the
Man,
wrong
but that's
reference.
Running
That was
Man
the wrong
was the
reference.
yeah.
Yeah.
Running Man. Running Man inspired
As
adventure.
we survive the game, if you will. I know a bunch of movie titles that we could talk about this.
Like I just see Brent like chaining movie titles together and the rest of us just being like, that was so
Do you
obscure. I
know
don't know
do
what
you
you're
know
talking
how
about.
many of those movies there are?
There's a lot. I know
There's a
Running Man
lot.
surviving
type
the game.
movies?
It's surviving the game, right? Is that?
Surviving the Game is one. Jim Cotta is one,
Oh yeah, I forgot
which
about
I
Jim Cotta.
watched. We watched over the
Was that
weekend.
wait, was that the one
Running
with the
Man.
like black
Olympian
and
Kurt
white
Thomas.
marbles or something? Was that
No,
Jim
Jim
Cotta?
Cotta's the one with the pommel horse.
Pommel horse.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the
Which is the one with the marbles?
I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come on,
It
man.
could be any movie with marbles in it.
Okay,
You talking
well,
about
so
Minority
obscure
Report?
Are you
Brent didn't
talking
even
about
know.
Are you talking about Red Belt, where they pull the marbles out of the bag and it determines who gets the handicap for the fight? You're
Sure.
talking about that? Red Belt has a weird thing with that in it, where like if you like pull the two marbles out of, if you pull the black marble out of the bag, like you get one arm time behind your back, or
Yep, that's the one. Yeah.
yeah,
That
that is
doesn't
that
sound like the same.
that's actually not a surviving the game movie at all.
Maybe you guys get marbles. Fuck fine, man. You get marbles, and therefore you have to do this with one arm tied behind your back. Let's just make this first level character even more like difficult to play. It's like playing a peasant funnel, but then saying all your peasants are just tied
It's a
up on a
peasant.
dinner
It's
plate.
a peasant funnel with one peasant. Good luck. That's not really a funnel, Mike. That's not really a funnel at all. That's just kind of a death march.
It's a what is it? It's a peasant pencil because there's just one that goes
It's
straight into the
it's
sharpener.
it's peasant plinko is what it is. Ping, 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 ping,
Okay.
ping, ping,
That's
ping.
fair.
Well, we've gone off topic. So with that, we'd like to thank everybody who's made it to this part of the episode. We really appreciate it. If you like these kind of conversations, of course, like, subscribe, tell your friends, share, do all those things if you want to.
Yeah, thank you.
Otherwise, we appreciate you. And if you have thoughts and topics on what you'd like us to talk about, or just want to hang out with us, come join us on Monday nights. And if you want to talk with us on those social media sites, you can get in touch with us via.
You can find us on most social media platforms. We are at Rollwise. If you don't find us there, we're probably not on that one. Uh, you can also email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com. You can also leave some comments on the videos. Up to you.
Yeah, leave some comments. We like to hear about your tables. And as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.